Welcome back. Today we're going to show you how to replace this old, worn, and bowed RV tabletop into a functional, beautiful granite-style epoxy resin art piece by using a scrap piece of laminate that we just had laying around. Are you ready? Well, let's go. We removed the old piece, went ahead and took off the hardware to save for the future piece. And we dumped the old piece out and got ready to perform a new piece with the wooden laminate that we had just laying around. We did the measurements and we saw that it was going to be a perfect size. So we said, you know what? Let's go ahead and scuff up this by using 40 grit sandpaper. We wanted to create a mechanical bond so that when we spray on our primer, the epoxy will adhere just perfectly. Always make sure and get the edges, spray off any residue that's left, and let's get to priming it. We used a copper paint and prime and made sure that we covered the whole top and side areas, because when we pour our epoxy, we don't want the copper to overpower the main color. We want the epoxy to kind of lighten out the tone of this copper, but at the same time we want to make sure that the base tones of the inside and the outside of the RV are met and that they're covered fully. We took the piece in, laid it on the table, and got it ready to use only the finest products. We're going to be using Upstart Epoxy's Tabletop Epoxy this time because it's a lot thicker of a material, and after all, we are doing a tabletop, so its self-leveling qualities will come in absolutely perfect. We're going to use a little bit of this black Rust-Oleum flat protective enamel, and we'll show you what we do with that here in a minute. But we're going to go ahead and use the colors brown, bronze, and we're going to use a sparkling white. Now what that sparkling white is going to do is it's going to cover the base coat of copper and at the same time lighten it, but still allow it to be seen, just not as drastic. We went ahead and mixed up 128 ounces, mixing part A 64 ounces and part B 64 ounces. We sprinkled up our sparkling white, and we're going to go ahead and pour it on the table and make sure that we cover the entire surface area, including the sides. We'll use a Bondo spreader that's conveniently supplied by Upstart Epoxy in every one of their kits to make sure that we move the epoxy all over the place and ensure a good overflow on the sides so that it makes it easier for the other colors that we add later to flow over naturally. Now we got this black spray paint and we wanted to simulate natural fracture lines like on granite or marble. We went ahead and spread out the lines, but after a while we realized that because this is alcohol based, it melded in too quickly with the epoxy. We weren't really happy with that, so we mixed up a small batch of black epoxy pigment, and we went ahead and went back over our previous areas. That way we ensure when we use the heat gun, we can move this material around a lot quicker and easier. Now this is the fun part, folks. Whenever you're getting to working with epoxy resin and stuff like this, especially with tabletop, there's a lot of forgiveness in the material. You can mess it up, but you can also go back and fix it, whether you pour more epoxy over it or you use the heat gun to move around the areas that you don't really like. As you'll notice, we used a lot of black in this because black is the perfect neutral color for a lot of projects that you're going to be working with. We wanted to make these lines distinguishable and make them really stand out. That way when we add the accent colors, you'll really see how it comes together and really pops out. When you're doing tabletops like this, it only gets easier and easier with each time that you try it. So I always recommend people to take your time, have fun with it, have fun with the heat gun, learn what it can do, learn what the foam brush can do here. In this case, we're smoothing out the black line here so that when we hit it with the heat gun, it makes it a little more fluid. As you'll see here, look at how it's spreading out. That's what you want. And if you don't like that, you can move it back to where you had it or pour a little more epoxy and start all over again. Like I told you, the epoxy is very forgiving, especially with this tabletop epoxy. The working time is about 1.5 hours to 2 hours, so that's plenty of time to just really mess with it, check it out, do what you think you may like. You don't like it, you fix it, do something else that you do like. Like here, for example, we did a couple little veins. we went back and fixed them because I really didn't like them. I tried the heat gun to try and mess with it, but then I fixed it. Here you see that we're getting closer to it, so it's time to hit it with some alcohol like we did right there. We used 90% isopropyl alcohol to spray onto the epoxy itself. And what that does is it gives it like a bubbling effect, and it almost makes it look like natural granite, which is really, really fun and cool to work with. Here we went ahead and added some accent colors, and we're kind of just making some lines and fragmentations and just basically experimenting with it. That's what it's all about, folks. It's what you like and how you want to do it. Experiment, try different things, try other things, use other colors, try other patterns. I like to use the over drip so I can go over the sides again, but trying to be careful not to hit the natural overflows where the accent lines have gone over the edge. That's what keeps it natural, and that's what makes it look real. I went ahead and used a paint stirring stick to scrape off the drips as they start hardening. Now I'll do this all the way up until it's pretty much almost cured. And 9 times out of 10, you'll usually still end up with a little bit of excess dripping on the bottom, but it's not crazy, it's not hard to take off. You can use a heat gun to scrape off the excess, or like here, we use 40 grit sandpaper to sand it off. It's ready to go back into the RV. So what we're gonna do is mount the brackets that we took off the old piece and pop them into this new piece so that the underside is ready to go. As soon as we take it back in, we can place it back on. Look how beautiful it turned out. We can't wait to see what the customer says about this, and we sure hope that they're happy, because that's what counts at the end of the day. And now it's that time. Remember, folks, we did this, so that means you can do this. We gave you a list of everything that we used. We used Upstart Epoxy Tabletop Epoxy. We used Upstart Epoxy Mica Pigments. We used some spray paint colors. Oh yeah, and a little bit of creativity, which is really what made this piece pop. We're gonna go ahead and install it, and let's get ready for that final reveal, folks. It's in its new home, and it's a fully functional piece of art, but you can also sit down and have lunch or a cup of coffee on this beautiful and stunning RV table. Thank you for watching, and make sure to hit that subscribe button if you want to see more of these videos. If you like it, feel free to drop a like. And hey, ask us some questions in the comment section.